The Patriots have been able to put together one of the greatest franchises in NFL history, as they are the first team to have 6 Super Bowl titles across a 2-decade span. And that includes a total of 9 Super Bowl appearances, with 6 wins and 3 losses from the years 2000 to 2020. The two men who led those great franchises, Tom Brady, future Hall of Fame quarterback of the New England Patriots, he has since left the team in the offseason for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it does not undervalue the greatness he has put towards this team as a league MVP, as ultimate stats leader, and a great quarterback. And the head coach during that span, none other than the mastermind himself, Bill Belichick, regarded as one of the greatest head coaches of all time, has been able to keep a winning team together for 19 out of the 20 seasons. And how have they been able to do this? Well, we're going to get into that as with the history of the decade, of the 2010s, what the team's current situation is right now, and why that has happened, and what the future holds for this franchise, as well as some of the men along the way who have put in effort into this team, which include none other than offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, owner and chairman Robert Kraft, former quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, and current quarterback Cam Newton, and what the effect these men have all had on the franchise. This is the tragedy of an empire. As Bill Belichick, regarded as one of the greatest head coaches of all time with a 275 and 131 regular season record, has some of the most wins in NFL history as a head coach, with 6 Super Bowl wins and 9 Super Bowl appearances in a 26-year head coaching career, which included 5 with the Cleveland Browns and 21 with the Patriots. He's been a part of 7 different franchises in his coaching career, which included a start as an assistant coach in 1975 with the Baltimore Ravens. And he has won three AP Coach of the Year titles in 2003, 2007, and 2010. And his quarterback during that span, former 6th round 199th overall pick out of Michigan, 6-time Super Bowl champion, 3-time league MVP, Tom Brady, as he is regarded as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, as no one has been able to do what he has done in his career as a Patriot. And Robert Kraft, who has seen this team go along since 1994 when he purchased the team as a Patriots fan. He has seen this team go to 10 Super Bowls and win 6 of them. He's the chairman and executive of the Kraft Group, which is a paper company. So for any of you Dunder Mifflin fans, this is an excuse to root for the Patriots. During the 2010 to 2014 seasons, there was a mixture of different changes for the Patriots at offensive coordinator. So from 2006 to 2008, the Patriots had Josh McDaniels as their offensive coordinator. And then he left and took that greatness of offenses in that span in 2007 and 2008 to a head coaching job for the Broncos in 2009. And he had that title until 2010, and he held a record of 11-17 as the offense was ranked bottom tier, as it was led by Tim Tebow at quarterback. He was fired before the season ended and took his offensive talents, you would say, to the Rams as offensive coordinator in 2011, where the offense was again ranked one of the worst in the NFL, with a 2-14 record on the season, led by quarterback Sam Bradford. And now he is back to being offensive coordinator of the Patriots, as he regained that title back in 2012, and he has held it until present day. Now, there's a lot of debate as to what Josh McDaniels has done for this franchise. Some may argue he has limited it. Some may say he is the offensive mastermind behind the past seasons of offensive terror by Tom Brady and his batch of nobodies that he gets every year. But we'll dive more into that later. In the years of 2010 to 2014, the Patriots have seen many key NFL draft hits, which include safety Devin McCourty in the first round and tight ends Rob Gronkowski in the second and Aaron Hernandez in 2010. In 2011, offensive tackle Nate Solder and offensive tackle Marcus Cannon. 2012, Chandler Jones, linebacker Dante Hightower, both great defensive players. 2013, Jamie Collins, defensive back Logan Ryan, defensive back Daron Harmon, and in 2014, quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo and running back James White. All of these players have had an effect on the franchise at some point or another, and some key draft misses. With many hits, there also come plenty of misses. In 2010, they drafted linebacker Jermaine Cunningham in the second round. He did not last with the team, neither did defensive back Rosai Dowling in 2011, as he was drafted with the 33rd overall pick in the second round, as well as running backs Shane Vereen and Stephen Ridley, who were taken in the second and third rounds, respectively. In 2012, they drafted defensive back Tavon Wilson in the second round and defensive end Jake Bequette in the third round. Neither stuck with the team. And in 2013, the Patriots drafted wide receiver Aaron Dobson in the second round, as he is one of the biggest busts in this past decade. And in 2014, they drafted defensive tackle Dominique Easley in the first round, as he did not last with the franchise and was, again, one of the biggest busts of the decade. The records by year for the Patriots include those in 2010, a 14-2 record as they lost the divisional round to the New York Jets. Then in 2011, they went 13-3. They lost to the Super Bowl to the New York Giants, Eli Manning's second Super Bowl title. In 2012, they lost the AFC Championship to none other than the Baltimore Ravens after going 12-4. And then in 2013, it was almost a repeat, as they went 12-4 and lost in the AFC Championship again, but this time to Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos, who would later go to get curb stomped by Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. And in 2014, the Patriots finally make the Super Bowl after a 12-4 record, and they win the Super Bowl on this play right here. Pure greatness of a play by undrafted cornerback Malcolm Butler, who made a spectacular play for the Patriots in the Super Bowl, getting them their first title since 2004 and starting what would be the second coming of the Patriots dynasty. In 2015, the Patriots drafted defensive tackle Malcolm Brown in the first round, defensive back Jordan Richards in the second, defensive end Genoa Grissom in the third, and offensive guard Shaq Mason in the fourth round, as well as signing defensive end Jabal Sheard, who made an instant impact for the Patriots as they went 12-4 and lost the AFC Championship to the Denver Broncos. And that led to Peyton Manning going on and winning his second Super Bowl title and later retiring, leaving Tom Brady as the clear-cut best quarterback in the league. In 2016, the Patriots drafted defensive back Cyrus Jones in the second round, offensive guard Joe Thuney in the third, quarterback Jacoby Brissett in the third, defensive tackle Vincent Valentine in the third, wide receiver Malcolm Mitchell in the 4th, linebacker Camus Grugier-Hill in the 6th, linebacker Elandon Roberts in the 6th, and offensive guard Ted Karras in the 6th round. Now in this draft, you see plenty of great steals, but also plenty of misses at the same time, as defensive back Cyrus Jones was later sent to the Baltimore Ravens, where he did not make it as a starter on the team there. Joe Thuney is one of the best offensive guards in the league right now, and Jacoby Brissett is a borderline starting quarterback in the league, sitting as a backup right now with the Indianapolis Colts. Defensive tackle Vincent Valentine never was able to become a clear-cut starter and was a mere poor play rotational piece on the defensive line when healthy. And wide receiver Malcolm Mitchell had some spurts but dealt with injuries and later retired very early in his career. Linebacker Camus Grugier-Hill didn't make it on the Patriots but became a staple on the Eagles' defense when he later went to the franchise. And linebacker Elandon Roberts and offensive guard Ted Karras, they made an impact on the team in their span later in their time with the Patriots, and then took the chance to go get money with the Dolphins. In that same offseason, they traded for linebacker Kyle Van Noy midway through the season from Detroit, but before the season, they traded away defensive end Chandler Jones for offensive guard Jonathan Cooper and a second-round pick from the Cardinals, as Chandler Jones at the time was one of the best defensive ends in the league. They had to choose between Dante Hightower and Chandler Jones to pay for the defense, and they chose Dante Hightower and decided to move on from Chandler Jones. In the same offseason, they also signed defensive end Chris Long, wide receiver Chris Hogan, running back LeGarrette Blount, and cornerback Justin Coleman as an undrafted free agent. And this was a season that the Patriots went 14-2 and won the Super Bowl against the Falcons, getting their 5th Super Bowl title in a overtime victory over the Falcons, where they came back 28-3. And this was the play that ended it off. Look at the pylon cam for this play. You can clearly tell that James White passes the play, for those doubters who say he didn't pass. But this does not stop or diminish all the effort that the Patriots put into winning this Super Bowl, as Brady at one point threw a pick six, and many during this game thought it was the end of the Patriots franchise. But they were resilient and came back and won the game to get their 5th Super Bowl title, and making Brady have the most Super Bowl wins by any quarterback in NFL history. "2017 is where the team starts to take a little bit of a dive in terms of all facets of the team. In the draft, they drafted defensive end Derek Rivers in the 3rd round, as well as offensive tackle Antonio Garcia, and then in the 4th round took defensive end Dietrich Wise. Now, Derek Rivers has had an injury-plagued career, but is slowly starting to make strides in coming back from that, but it is certainly not worth the 3rd rounder. And offensive tackle Antonio Garcia never made it with the team, and defensive end Dietrich Wise is a good value pick and is a rotational defensive end on the Patriots' defensive line. In the same offseason, they signed multifaceted running back Rex Burkhead, run-stopping defensive tackle Lawrence Guy, and shut-down corner Stephon Gilmore. In this same offseason, they wanted to make a push to make this team better, so they traded for wide receiver Brandon Cooks for a 1st-round pick from the New Orleans Saints. They traded cornerback Justin Coleman to the Seattle Seahawks in 2018 for a 7th-round pick, and they also traded quarterback Jacoby Brissett for wide receiver Philip Dorsett before the season started, all to make this team be one of the best franchises there is. But now see, the Patriots had an issue. Back in 2016, Tom Brady was suspended for 4 games due to the Deflategate issue that was later proven to not be cheating. But when you look at it, Jimmy Garoppolo in that span played 2 games, won both, and he had a completion percentage of 68.3% with 502 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Jimmy Garoppolo, up until this point in his career, looked like he could be a bona fide starter in the league and a great quarterback, which led some debates between Bill Belichick, whether he was going to trade Tom Brady, whether he was going to keep Tom Brady and trade Jimmy Garoppolo. It was never a clear decision and still is not what Bill Belichick wanted to do. But what eventually happened, and based off of the rumors say, is that he wanted to trade Tom Brady and roll with Jimmy Garoppolo for the season. And Tom Brady went to Robert Kraft and said he did not want that to happen. He wanted to play for the Patriots. So Robert Kraft shut it down, and Bill Belichick would later trade Jimmy Garoppolo at the trade deadline for a second-round pick. So in terms of deciding who the Patriots were going to keep, they stuck with Brady for the next however long Brady wanted to play, and Jimmy Garoppolo, a most likely future franchise quarterback for the Patriots, if not for Brady's want to play into his 40s, was shipped off to play for the 49ers. So later into that season, Super Bowl 52 occurs, where the Patriots finish with a 13-3 record and go on to play the Philadelphia Eagles. And they lose this Super Bowl to Nick Foles, who came in before this playoff started as Carson Wentz was out for the year. And there's a lot of debate between this Super Bowl, as Bill Belichick made the decision to bench all-star cornerback Malcolm Butler before the game. And when even up to this day, over 3 years later, no team, no player, other than Bill Belichick, knows why Malcolm Butler was benched for that game. The most popular report was that he was partying too much before the game, and it was proven false that he was even out partying by former teammates. So who knows, other than Bill Belichick, why Malcolm Butler was benched. And the theory behind it is that Bill Belichick, out of spite for having to trade who he wanted as the future quarterback of the New England Patriots, who he valued much more than a second-round pick, so he threw the Super Bowl, benching the starting cornerback who made multiple plays in the last Super Bowls he had been in, digging a huge morale drop to the defense as they allowed over 40 points against an Eagles offense that wasn't even deemed as a high-powered offense. And this led to major confusion as to the Patriots' future, and nobody knew what the Patriots' season and future seasons would hold. So in 2018, the Patriots, with two first-round picks, would trade offensive tackle Isaiah Wilson and running back Sony Michel in the first round, with second-round defensive back Duke Dawson, linebacker Jawan Bentley, wide receiver Braxton Berrios in the 5th and 6th, and tight end Ryan Izzo in the 7th round. They made major plays in the offseason with talent leaving and bringing in talent, as in the offseason they traded away Brandon Cooks for a first-round pick. Wide receiver Danny Amendola left the franchise. Cornerback Malcolm Butler would leave. Running back Dion Lewis and offensive tackle Nate Solder would all leave. So in corresponding moves, the Patriots would trade for wide receiver Cordero Patterson, cornerback Jason McCourty, defensive tackle Danny Shelton, wide receiver Josh Gordon, and offensive tackle Trent Brown. During this season, the Patriots finished 11-5, and there were many doubters as to how the season would go for the Patriots, as many expected it to be the downfall of the Patriots as they lost multiple games that they were not expected to lose, and many people had questioned the future of this franchise, both near and into the far future. They made the playoffs and would play the Chargers in the divisional round, as many expected the Chargers to blow them out of the water. Instead, the Patriots put up 40 points and let off the gas at the end for the Chargers to score 20 points in a major blowout win in the divisional round, and then going on to beat favorite Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship in overtime, which would send the Patriots to play the Los Angeles Rams in the Super Bowl and win 13-3 in what is the lowest scoring Super Bowl in NFL history, giving Tom Brady his 6th Super Bowl title and making him known as the greatest quarterback of all time. So now, you would think this is the grand peak of the Brady-Belichick era, as they had just won their 6th Super Bowl title. You can never think that it would go downhill from here. But you would be quite wrong, as in 2019, the Patriots drafted wide receiver N'Keal Harry in the first round, defensive back Jawan Williams in the second, defensive end Chase Winovich in the third, as well as running back Damian Harris and offensive tackle Yannick Juice, with quarterback Jarrett Stidham coming in the fourth round and punter Jake Bailey coming in the fifth. They also traded in the offseason for defensive end Michael Bennett, with key signings of bringing back Jamie Collins after previously trading him, tight end Benjamin Watson, who was drafted by the Patriots in the first decade of the dynasty, wide receiver Demaryius Thomas, who was later traded before the season started, tight end offensive Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who was cut before the season started, and running back Brandon Bolden. Some key departures included wide receiver Chris Hogan, tight end Rob Gronkowski, who had retired, defensive tackle Malcolm Brown, who was a former first-round pick, who couldn't just seem to make it as an all-star, defensive end Trey Flowers, who was the Patriots' sack leader, and stud offensive tackle Trent Brown. The Patriots would start the season with an 8-0 record, and at one point being questioned as to having the ability to go 16-0 with an all-star defense ranked as one of the best in the league, with Tom Brady leading an offense. Everyone thought that this is exactly what it was like in the original Super Bowl wins back in the early 2000s. But the season would take a turn, as the Patriots would finish off with a 12-4 record, with an upset loss to finish it from Miami in Week 17, who was expected to go winless on the season but would finish 5-11. Now, with that being said, the Patriots would make the playoffs and have to play in the wild card round. And this would be the final play of Brady's career. I couldn't get a GIF for it, but to anyone being a Patriots fan, you know exactly what play this is. This was the play that would be Brady's last throw as a New England Patriot. It would be an interception by defensive back Logan Ryan, former Patriot, who would return it to the house for a touchdown. Brady's final career throw as a New England Patriot. In the off-season, there were more departures than in any offseason for the Patriots in this decade, as they lost quarterback Tom Brady, who would sign with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who also pulled Rob Gronkowski out of retirement, who would be later traded to the Buccaneers. James Devlin would retire from his fullback position. Wide receiver Philip Dorsett was traded to the Seahawks. Tight end Benjamin Watson retired. Defensive tackle Danny Shelton signed with the Detroit Lions. Linebacker Kyle Van Noy would sign with the Dolphins. Linebacker Jamie Collins would sign with the Lions. Linebacker Elandon Roberts would sign with the Dolphins. And safety Duron Harmon would be traded to the Lions. All of these players were starters at one point or another on this Patriots team. And that includes so many different all-stars and studs on both the defensive and offensive sides, as a divorce would happen between Brady and Belichick, as Brady felt that he did not want to play for the Patriots anymore. There's tons of speculation behind it that include the possible trade back in 2017 with Jimmy Garoppolo, as well as Belichick not getting Tom Brady any offensive help, and we'll get more into that in a bit. In this offseason, before this current season, in the draft, the Patriots drafted safety Kyle Duggar in the second round, as well as linebacker Josh Uche, linebacker Anthony Jennings in the third, tight ends Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene in the third round, kicker Justin Rohrwasser in the fifth, and offensive lineman Michael Onwenu in the sixth round. They signed quarterback Brian Hoyer, linebacker Brandon Copeland, safety Adrian Phillips, defensive tackle Bo Allen, and wide receivers Damiere Byrd and Marquise Lee. Now, going into this season, the Patriots were expected to have a quarterback competition between Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer, as they elected to not take a quarterback in the draft, as they traded back from their first-round pick at the 23rd and moved back to 2 second-round picks, as they had traded their second-round pick for Mohamed Sanu halfway through the season last year. And that would later prove to be a horrible mistake. But before we get into that, you're looking at this and you're saying Jarrett Stidham, a second-year player out of Auburn, fourth-round pick, got to sit behind Brady. His only career throws included garbage time against the Jets, with one being a pick six. And Brian Hoyer, with his third stint with the Patriots, never made it as a starter in the league anywhere else, and has a career win-loss record of way below 500. So it didn't look very optimistic for the Patriots coming into the season, and many had lost hope. Until the Patriots in the middle of July, signed quarterback Cam Newton to a 1-year, $1 million contract to come, quote-unquote, participate in the quarterback competition, which he would later destroy and win the starting quarterback job, coming off of back-to-back seasons of injuries with the Panthers, in which they would release him. Cam Newton was healthy, and he was hungry, and he was ready to battle. And then, during this time span, the coronavirus outbreak was going on. It was in doubt whether a season would happen, so the league and the NFL and the NFLPA put a plan together which involved players being allowed to opt out of the season. There were over 60 players that opted out, and of those over 60, 8 New England Patriots decided to opt out of the season, the most of any team by a long shot. Those opt-outs included running back Brandon Bolden, wide receiver Marquise Lee, who was just signed in the offseason, tight end Matt LaCosse, fullback Dan Vitale, who was just signed in the offseason, starting right tackle Marcus Cannon, offensive guard Najee Turan, starting stud linebacker Dante Hightower, and starting strong safety Patrick Chung. So if you combine all these opt-outs with all of the turnover from the offseason in terms of all the players that they lost and the very few that they gained, and you can expect how the season has gone. The Patriots are currently 2-4 at the time of recording and are going to play the Buffalo Bills tomorrow, with wins against the Dolphins and the Raiders, with losses to the Seahawks, Chiefs, Broncos, and 49ers. Cam Newton has a 2-3 record with a 67.2% completion percentage and a 2-7 touchdown to interception ratio, with a couple touchdowns being scored by running. The reason Cam Newton is not 2-4 is because the game against the Chiefs, Cam Newton contracted the coronavirus and had to sit out that game. And that led to a spread of the virus across the team as players like Stephon Gilmore, defensive tackle Byron Cowart, depth center Jason Ferentz, and multiple other players catching the virus. If you have watched any games this season as a Patriots fan, you would know that the offense looks flat and has absolutely no chemistry at all. Cam Newton's receivers have been flat out unacceptable in their play, as receivers like Julian Edelman, who has been a stud for this team for a decade, at the age of 34 and 2 busted knees, which he just had surgery on and will be out for tomorrow's game against the Bills, could not catch a ball and would pop balls up in the air to get intercepted, which happened twice in a season. It was one of those things that you're like, wait, that's happened twice already this season? Former first-round wide receiver N'Keal Harry, who was expected and drafted to be a go-up-and-get-it 50-50 ball catcher, has been far from it, as he has not been able to catch any 50-50 balls and is being used like he is a speed receiver. And this has led to him having very few statistics on the season, as in 6 games this season he has been targeted 32 times for 19 receptions, 172 yards, and a touchdown. These are abysmal numbers for a former first-round receiver, and we'll get into why this is abysmal in a bit. His total career stats, though, include in 11 games, he's had 56 targets, 31 receptions, and 277 yards to go along with 3 touchdowns. The best receiver for the Patriots so far this season has been signee wide receiver Damiere Byrd, who has just over 200 yards on the season. And now you look at this and say, well, why is this happening with the offense? Well, this offense was built by Josh McDaniels with the idea that it would be a power running team with play action and by Cam Newton with quarterback options, because Cam Newton was healthy, he could run. It took 4 games for teams to figure out how to stop this, at the time, an offense that didn't look too bad. 4 games, and teams were able to stop the run, as Sony Michel has been a bust of a running back so far in his career. And all the other running backs the Patriots have rotated through with their opportunities, some pulling through, as running back Rex Burkhead scored 3 touchdowns in a win against the Raiders, but has been flat since. Former third-round running back from last year, Damian Harris, has had his spurts, but hasn't been consistent. The offensive line has gone through many injuries this year and many different rotations and setups, as at one point in the Broncos game, they had 5 offensive guards playing in the game. So normally you have 2 offensive guards, but because of different changes they had to make, they had 5 offensive guards playing on the field at one time, whether it was a tackle that had to play guard because of injuries or a guard who had to go play tackle. It was a mess of an offensive line, and partially why they lost. You can say that this is because the NFL decided to have no preseason, which I think is a look at proving why the league needs a preseason. As Tom Brady had a quote earlier in the season that, because the Buccaneers offense didn't look great to start off the season this year. And he said normally by this point, this would be our 4th preseason game. And that put it into perspective as 4 weeks into the season, that's 4 games. Normally in the preseason, you play 4 games. So these teams were putting together their offenses in the first 4 weeks. Whereas the Patriots, normally when the league zigs, the Patriots zag. So right now, the offenses of the league include very pass-heavy, spread offenses with a deep ball passing attack. So that means the Patriots zagged, but instead of zagging forward with something new, which in the past they've zagged to the 3 wide receiver with a slot receiver, as well as 2 tight ends who were not just blocking. This time the Patriots zag back in time to a power running offense that has had success for the Patriots before. But this team got no chance to work on it. The Patriots have no receiving threats, as they have one of the worst receiving corps in the NFL, even worse than teams like the winless New York Jets. And that is just on the offensive side. The defense, who is built to be this monster defense and has had plenty of turnover in the offseason, cannot stop the run. In their past game against the 49ers had been dealing with running back injuries, which brought them all the way down to having running back Jedrick Wilson Jr., their 4th-string running back, be the lead back for that offense. He rushed for almost 100 yards in the first half and 3 touchdowns. The Patriots have not been able to stop the run for the entire season, as running backs have just ran right down their throats. And this is due to the fact that Bill Belichick didn't put together a defense that could stop the run. He put together a defense that could stop the pass. Like I said, when the league zigs and goes to an air raid, Bill Belichick zags and gets a massive, very productive secondary, which includes the likes of former league or defensive player of the year Stephon Gilmore, up-and-coming cornerback J.C. Jackson, stud slot corner Jonathan Jones, all-star safety Devin McCourty. But the Patriots have gone to a defensive scheme that they don't normally play this year and is being torn apart. The Patriots have run more zone this year than they have in previous seasons, and it is clearly showing that this team is not meant to play zone, as their corners are meant to go man-to-man and beat teams with their physicality. And it is not happening when you go with a zone coverage and these quarterbacks pick them apart because the team doesn't know how to play zone coverage. So with all the COVID injuries, it's in a record of 2-4 and possibly 2-5 if they lose to the Bills this weekend. There are talks of selling at the trade deadline players like Stephon Gilmore, Joe Thuney, and many others, as reports are saying all players are available for trade for the Patriots. So does this mean that it is going to lead to a tank? Quite possibly. I don't want to think that Bill Belichick would be one to tank, but there are many questions to make about Bill Belichick's recent decisions as not only a head coach, but also as a general manager. Looking into the future, I think this season proves that Josh McDaniels was not the offensive guru that he was pinned to be. I think he was a mere puppet of the great mind of Tom Brady, who knew how to play the game, and Josh McDaniels built around it. There have been many reports that the Patriots playbook is very complicated. Former wide receiver Mohamed Sanu, who was cut this off-season after having ankle surgery and not being able to recover. Again, the team traded a second-round pick for him, but we'll get into later why the team hasn't been the best in their front office moves. Right now, Josh McDaniels has been flat out horrible as an offensive coordinator and offensive play caller. The offense he has put together is full of young, growing players who have no idea what they're doing because the offense is so complex yet so simple at the same time, because all the Patriots know how to do is run behind the offensive guard and get 2 yards on a carry and throw interceptions because Cam Newton has been inaccurate all season. Whether it's an overthrow or an underthrow, he has been inaccurate all year. This, I think, should lead to the firing of offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, as he has proven time and time again that without talent, he has not been able to succeed anywhere he has been. He got the head coach job with the Broncos because of the 2007 offense he had with Tom Brady, and then the 11-5 season with Matt Castle. But many forget that Matt Castle's receiving corps included those of Randy Moss and Wes Welker. Right now, Cam Newton has a broken Julian Edelman and N'Keal Harry. I think that Josh McDaniels needs to be gone after the season, and they need to have a reset on the offense, both in playbook, play calling, and scheming, as it just needs to be completely rebooted and refreshed. And this is just Tom Brady's stats by his year in his career. So before the season started and when last season finished, I was a believer in that we should not re-sign Tom Brady. I have no shame in saying that. And I have the stats to prove why I had that decision. If you look at his career years from 2010 to 2015, great statistics all across the board. In 2011, he had the best year in this past decade with 5,235 yards thrown. But if you look at all the other highlights, they occur in 2016, the year where they beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl. And now if you look at all the years following, you can see that the stats have gone down in every year. By each year, his completion percentage has decreased. His yards per season, they jumped up from 2016 to 2017, but then slowly started to drop. His touchdown interception ratio started to get worse and worse. So now, but looking at his statistics so far in 6 games with the Buccaneers, he has a 65.7% completion percentage, which is on target with what he had pre-2019 with the Patriots. He has 1,900 yards thrown for, which is on pace to be his best mark since 2015. He has a touchdown interception ratio of 18-4, which is on pace to be his best since 2011. And he is 5-2, so 7 games this season, not 6. So it is clear to see why teams and fans wanted to move on from Tom Brady, including myself. But it also goes to show that it might not have been Brady. Brady is kicking butt with the Buccaneers right now, and I have no shame in saying it. But if you look at the weapons that he has there compared to what he had and would have had this season with the Patriots, it is very different. As right now with the Buccaneers, he has Mike Evans, who is a top 10 receiver, Chris Godwin, who is a top 20 receiver, Rob Gronkowski, who is a top 5 tight end when healthy, and now they just signed Antonio Brown, who in his one game that he had with the Patriots back in 2019 was amazing, had an amazing connection with Tom Brady. And there was a report that in practice, Tom Brady would throw deep balls to Antonio Brown over and over, and were asked to stop doing that because it would just be repetitive touchdowns deep. But what these stats are really trying to show is the poor decision making, both in the front office and the offensive scheme, as Brady has been able to do just fine in a Bruce Arians offense that is known to chuck the ball deep. But Brady has just amount of input in that offense as he used to with the Patriots, if not more. So with that being said, the great Bill Belichick, greatest head coach in the last century, or in the new century, the 21st century. But he is also known as the general manager of this franchise, and has been for quite some time. I have an idea that Bill Belichick got comfortable with having Tom Brady as his quarterback and focused on building a killer defense for this team. Most of the money was invested on the defense. Most of the top draft capital was invested on the defense. And we are starting to see the effects of it. In the last couple drafts, in the first round, Bill Belichick has taken... Last year, he took nobody, as he traded his first round pick for 2 seconds. That second round pick, he traded for Mohamed Sanu, who turned out to be a bust. So that was a waste of a second round pick. In 2019, he drafted wide receiver N'Keal Harry as a run blocking wide receiver. And that was the idea behind the N'Keal Harry pick. As we'll get into why Bill Belichick didn't take some other receivers. But Bill Belichick has been known for trying to get people to play his system and the way he wants to play, and not adapting to the talents of other players. And for this decision, I think Bill Belichick needs to be taken out of his position as general manager. He has led this team into a crossroads where they have no offensive talent other than the offensive line. But the defense looks stellar, but the issue is, even as a defensive play caller, he's not making the correct decisions on defense. I'm not there yet to have him step down as head coach because he is a great defensive mastermind. But I do think that someone else needs to be making decisions in the Patriots front office. That person I don't think should be Bill Belichick. I think it should be none other than Nick Caserio, who's been a great front office person for the Patriots. But now getting into the N'Keal Harry pick, they took N'Keal Harry with the 32nd overall pick in the 2019 NFL Draft. At the time, some players available were wide receivers DK Metcalf, who went 64th overall and is a stud receiver with the Seahawks, A.J. Brown, who went 51st overall and is now a stud receiver with the Titans, wide receiver Deebo Samuel, who is now a stud receiver with the 49ers, has dealt with injuries, but he's proven that he has talent, wide receiver Mecole Hardman, who went 56th overall, who's behind a good amount of depth with the Chiefs, but has been a speedster with good hands, and wide receiver Andy Isabella, who was taken 62nd overall by the Cardinals, who has shown flashes of great speed and playmaking ability. All of these receivers have more yards and plays this year than N'Keal Harry. And this is what frustrates Patriots fans, as N'Keal Harry has not been able to develop because of the Patriots system. He's not meant to fit in that. And the Patriots took N'Keal Harry because they wanted to switch to a power running game. And N'Keal Harry was dubbed as the best run-blocking wide receiver in this class. So that's where you can see the issues with the Patriots front office right now. Instead of taking a talented receiver in DK Metcalf or A.J. Brown, they chose to take someone who they thought best fit their system. Another example of this, the Patriots took running back Sony Michel out of Georgia with the 31st overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft. At that same time, the Patriots could have taken quarterback Lamar Jackson, who is now a top 5 quarterback in the NFL for the Baltimore Ravens, running back Nick Chubb, who was taken in the second round by the Browns, not too many picks later, who has been a top 5 running back in the league, wide receiver Courtland Sutton, who was drafted in the second round by the Denver Broncos, where at this time the Patriots still needed receiver help, and they could have easily gone and gotten it, as well as wide receiver Christian Kirk, who has been a good receiver for the Cardinals. So plenty of talent that the Patriots could have taken, but they chose to take the small, beefy running back who they thought could run between the tackles, who has no speed in the second line of defense, and cannot get more than 10 yards a carry. This is the issue with the Patriots drafting offensively. And now when you look at how the Patriots draft defensively, just looking at the 2018 draft, the Patriots took, many of you don't even know who that picture is on the left. That would be defensive back Duke Dawson, who was taken by the Patriots in the second round of the 2018 NFL Draft. At this same time, the Patriots could have taken wide receiver James Washington, wide receiver DJ Chark, linebacker Fred Warner, who has been a stud of a middle linebacker for the 49ers, wide receiver Michael Gallup, and tight end Mark Andrews. But instead, Bill Belichick, who has been crazy and known for not drafting well, with second-round defensive backs. Luckily, the last two have looked okay, with Jawan Williams in a limited role, and Kyle Duggar now playing starting strong safety with Patrick Chung opting out. But that's 3 straight years Bill Belichick has taken a defensive back in the second round, and only one of them is a starter, and he was just drafted this year. One, not even on the team anymore, as after drafting him in the second round, the following year Bill Belichick trades him to the Denver Broncos for a 6th-round pick. That is absolute poor front office play by Bill Belichick, as he didn't even give a chance for the player to develop, which means he wasn't that connected to him in the first place. The errors in the drafting of this front office have clearly shown, as teams who have not even played that great have all-star players that were drafted after these players by the Patriots, who could have played so much better if the Patriots would have taken them. And this is why Nick Caserio should be made general manager of the Patriots. The Houston Texans tried poaching him in the offseason and instead decided to keep Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien's now gone. Nick Caserio needs to be made general manager, as a lot of the ideas that he has had have been shut down by Bill Belichick, and he needs to be given the chance to build a team the way that he wants to build a team, and have Bill Belichick run with it, and let Bill Belichick focus on developing these players and getting them to do their job as players, and instead trying to draft players that he wants to fit a specific need, instead of taking talent and best players available when you can build around them instead. The needs in the offseason are very crazy for the Patriots, as they will need a quarterback, as Cam Newton is only signed a one-year deal. They'll need a power back, as Damian Harris and Sony Michel have proven that they are not there yet. Damian Harris could still take some development, but Sony Michel has been through injuries and has just proven that he is a bust of a first-round pick. They will need multiple wide receivers this year, as Julian Edelman will most likely retire after having knee surgery. A tight end if Asiasi and Keene do not develop. Right tackle, because right now the starting right tackle is Jermaine Illuminor, who the Patriots traded for a day 3 pick last year. I don't think Marcus Cannon is the answer. He looked shaky the last time he was playing, and I believe that he should be cut or traded in the offseason. The Patriots will need at least 2 run defenders, whether you want to go 2 defensive tackles, defensive ends, inside linebackers. You need some run stoppers because the Patriots just keep getting gashed on the running side. They need an inside linebacker, as Jawan Bentley has been slow and hasn't been the greatest playmaker so far for the Patriots in terms of trying to fill in for Dante Hightower. And they will need a kicker, as Justin Rohrwasser right now got beat out by Nick Folk, who has been one of the most inconsistent kickers in the last couple years. I do think that the most needed need is wide receiver. So we'll get into wide receivers to take. But 2021 free agents for the Patriots include guard Joe Thuney, cornerback Jason McCourty, running back James White, defensive tackle Lawrence Guy, defensive tackle Adam Butler, center David Andrews, running back Rex Burkhead, defensive end John Simon, quarterback Cam Newton, defensive end Dietrich Wise, and cornerback J.C. Jackson. So the big one on this list is, do the Patriots keep Cam Newton? I say no, because he's going to cost too much, and he has not proven that he can be the franchise quarterback for this Patriots. Next, we got Joe Thuney, who I think we shouldn't keep. If anything, I believe that the Patriots, if they lose tomorrow against the Bills, should trade Joe Thuney away and get whatever value they can from him, as he is a free agent this offseason, and they have plenty of depth on the offensive line. Next to not sign, they should not keep John Simon, as he has been an average pass rusher at best, but has not been able to stop the run and is not the best in pass coverage. They should not hold on to Jason McCourty, as in a starting position this year, he has been very slow and has gotten beat on multiple occasions by faster receivers because he's an aging corner who doesn't have shutdown abilities. And they should not hold on to Rex Burkhead, as he's going to cost too much money, and the Patriots need to have a revamp at the running back position. The other players that do not have an X on them, James White should totally be re-signed, as he is a good dual threat running back. Defensive tackle Lawrence Guy, who is one of the main positive sides of the Patriots' defensive line. Center David Andrews, who is a stud center and has proven that when the Patriots do not have him at center, miscues happen. Defensive tackle Adam Butler, who has been a decent pass rushing defensive tackle, but needs to work on his run defense. Defensive end Dietrich Wise, who is a good rotational piece and is not expensive. And future all-star corner, I'm saying it now, J.C. Jackson, who's a restricted free agent, so either way the Patriots should be able to hold on to him, or they're going to get somewhere around a second-round pick for him. With the biggest need being in the free agent market, wide receivers for the Patriots, my top-tier wide receivers for the Patriots to go after include wide receiver Chris Godwin from Tampa Bay, as if Antonio Brown stays out of trouble, they're going to most likely re-sign him because that's who Brady would want to keep. Chris Godwin would most likely have to leave in the offseason. Wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, who the Steelers just keep hitting on wide receivers and could find himself out of there, with Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and James Washington all taking the bigger roles. Wide receiver Kenny Golladay, who has been shopped by the Lions, who don't want to pay him. Wide receiver Allen Robinson, who, similar situation with the Bears, do not want to pay him the money that he wants. Wide receiver Will Fuller, who was taken in the first round by the Texans a couple years ago and has had injury concerns, but when healthy has showed that he can be a very good wide receiver. And wide receiver Corey Davis, who was taken with the 5th overall pick in 2017 by the Titans, who did not live up to those standards, but is still not a horrible wide receiver. And a many long list of other wide receivers include Dede Westbrook, Sammy Watkins, T.Y. Hilton, Curtis Samuel, John Ross, Kenny Stills, Marvin Jones, and A.J. Green. All as wide receivers that the Patriots can go after, as they will have $75 million in cap space and could easily sign at least 2 of these receivers. And I think that it would have a major impact at whoever plays quarterback for the Patriots in the future, whether they re-sign Cam Newton, whether they stick with Jarrett Stidham after the season, or go and sign someone or draft someone. Either way, I think this is the route that the Patriots need to go if they want to have a successful offense next year. When looking at the divorce between Belichick and Brady, many expected Belichick to be able to come out of it okay. But right now, Brady is the clear winner, as he is a Super Bowl favorite in the NFC, who just got Antonio Brown onto his team. He has one of the best offenses in the league, with a shutdown defense who has held even Aaron Rodgers to barely throwing for over 100 yards and 2 interceptions. This is a stud team who has a chance to go make a playoff run and even go play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Whereas Belichick has been left slumped over, questioning all of the decisions that he has made, both as head coach and general manager, as choosing to let Brady walk and not being able to build a team to be successful for this year. As you can clearly see, that Belichick has not been able to get done what he used to with Tom Brady as his quarterback. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this, I put a lot of time and effort into this. If you did enjoy, please subscribe and leave a like. It would be very much appreciated. This was just an idea that I had. If you want more of these done in the future, that could totally be arranged. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Have a great Halloween if you are watching this on Halloween or after. Hope you had a great Halloween. And let's go Patriots.